await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Still your mind if you want to pray. Send all cares far away. Sing then, love's ever near. Isis comes, await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Still your heart if you want to pray. Send all cares far away. Sing then, love's ever near. Isis comes, await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Still your heart if you want to pray. Send all cares far away. Sing then, love's ever near. Isis comes, await the day. Isis comes, await the day. Mother comes, await the day.
Soul if you want to
Still your soul if you want to
Still your soul if you want to
Still your soul if you want to
soul if you want to
Still your soul if you want to
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 soul if you want to pray.
Isis comes, await the day.
Isis comes, await the day.
Mother comes, await the day.
I'm reading today from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriya-yoga, based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. This week's topic is, how should we meet our tests? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. Last week we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives. Some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious, or from outside ourselves, is secondary to the fact that it does come and that we must deal with it. More important then is the question, how to deal with it. In fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an ink pot at the devil, who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell is pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not so often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, "If only I could get my hands on him." This was a very strong fellow. Jesus, during his temptations in the wilderness, overcame them and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramhansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us, therefore, that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic, or spiritually elevating, rajasic, or ego activating, and tamasic, or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, "As fire is hidden by smoke, as a mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire." Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of any identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajoguna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamoguna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can be outgrown only in time, since it inhibits even the desire for self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom sattva guna is predominant. But if you find in yourself elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has been well said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in the right direction, you will come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, "A saint is a sinner who never gave up." If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction, toward egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions, which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at last to redirect your energies more constructively. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. How should we meet our tests? Well, this has been a great topic. I'll start in a way that Swami Kriyananda used to often start, by listing all the physical things that had gone wrong with him and how he had fallen and broken a couple of ribs, or, he had the most incredible physical karma of anybody I've ever met. And I think it was because he took on a lot of karma. In fact, there was one day when a friend and I we were both working for Swami at that time, and he invited us to stay for lunch. So it was just the three of us, and we were talking. And the subject of taking on karma came up. And I said, "Swami, do you take on people's karma?" And he did what he often did when he didn't want to answer. He would sort of look down for a moment. And then he came up with the right answer, and he said, "We all have to do our part." And so we all do our part, whatever it is. Sometimes I often do kriyas for other people. When they're in trouble, pray for them and do spiritual practices for them. It's very helpful. So in that spirit, I'll just say that I've been studying how should we meet our tests for the past 2.5 weeks. Because when we were putting the temple back together after it got painted, I fell backwards. And it was my Birkenstocks that did it. It just sort of bent in a funny way and tripped me, and I went back. And so I've been having muscle spasms in the lower part of my torso for 2.5 weeks. It's made getting in and out of bed like a Olympic sport. And what I've realized, because I listened to a lot of spiritual things while I was recovering, and one thing struck me very deeply, and that is that, well, just to take a step back, Swami would often go out on tour and give lectures, teach meditation classes. And one of the titles that he used quite often was Building Spiritual Power for Troubled Times. And how do we do that? Meditation. But I realized that it's not just meditation where we're looking at the clock and, okay, I have all these things to do today, so I have this 1 hour. Go deep, okay? And you're mentally watching the clock or whatever it is, restless thoughts coming in, all that sort of thing. Meditation should be a deep rest. Meditation should be going back to your true self. In fact, we should really have this affirmation going in our minds, pasted up on the refrigerator so we see it every day, something to remind us that I am the immortal soul. My being is different from my doing. There's so much that we do in this world. We're always moving. We're always with the checklist, all the work, all the little chores, everything that we have to do. But meditation is a time to step back from that, to just rest in the soul and not be bothered by all the forest fire that's over here and the political unrest here and the war over there. In fact, when we think about those things, and it's Dwapara Yuga, so we're well aware of everything. It's hard to escape knowing what's happening in every corner of the world. But if we, as soon as we hear or see these things that are happening, instead of having our energy sink into, oh God, this is so terrible, another horrible thing has happened. Instead of having that thought, instead operate from the soul level and think, more souls are working out their karma. Let me bless them. God be with them. And what happens? The energy rises. Think about all the millions of people in the world who have cell phones and who look at the news every time they open their phone. And what do? They go, oh God. And what does that do to the collective energy of the planet? Satan loves that. I bet he just loves cell phones. But let's counteract all that negative energy. Let's bless everything that's happening. Send energy, send God's love, send peace and harmony to every time something happens. Oh, they did this. Oh, God. No, God bless them. They're working out their karma. God is working in this world. We have to trust that. We have to believe in that. So when I was practicing my Olympic sport of getting in and out of bed, and it had been 2 weeks about, and then my helper, who was helping me get in and out of bed, had to fly to Chicago. He had to be with his dad. So I rallied around. And those were some of the worst nights that I had, but they were the best. Because what I realized is that tests are given to us so that we can dig deep, so we can pull from the recesses of our consciousness what little strength we have and multiply it and expand it and feel God's strength. One of the best quotations from the Bible that I love, God says to the devotee, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness." Meaning, when we are the weakest, that's when we realize how strong God is, and that He's always there. He's waiting for us to ask Him. We don't need to go into every situation, every problem, every pain, every moment of suffering alone. We are not alone. That beautiful song of Swami's, the birds of the, no, what is it called? He who clothes the birds of
the field
fields
with lilies.
The last line is, know that you live not alone. And that's what we have to remember. That we are never, ever alone. I also had time to read. And so I read about post-traumatic stress syndrome and its counterpart, which I had never known about before, even though it was first talked about in the 1990s. Post-traumatic growth. And that comes about, you can look it up, get a better explanation than I can give you. But basically, it's realizing that adversity brings growth. And I would say further, though they didn't talk about this, but what you're struggling with is a gift that you can give to other people who are struggling. It's like we're being trained up in how to help. So whatever you're struggling with, realize that someday God is going to use you to help somebody with that very thing. The saints often experience adversity. There's a story that Swami used to tell of a policeman who was frantically trying to catch a criminal who had just committed a crime. And he was running down the streets in India trying to catch this criminal. And he saw a man walking and he thought that was him. So he yelled at this person to stop. And the person didn't stop. He just kept right on moving. So the policeman took the only weapon he had was an axe, and he severed the man's arm to get him to stop. And it was a sadhu. And the sadhu calmly picked up his arm and reattached it. No problem, completely healed. And then he told the policeman where to find the criminal. So adversity can be turned. St. Teresa of Avila had a wonderful line. She said, this whole life is like spending one night in a very bad hotel. We just can't take it too seriously. A friend of mine was telling me about childbirth and the pain of childbirth. On a scale from 1 to 10, that's 10. And she said, what's your pain? And I said, 1? I don't know, maybe 11? Whatever it is, it's always relative. But through that experience, there is always growth, and we have to trust that and come to that on our own. God bless.
There's a wonderful chapter in Autobiography of a Yogi, the book, and in it, Yogananda is describing the process of getting his university degree. And he's with Sri Yukteswar, and Sri Yukteswar says, I hope you're in readiness for your AB exams. And Yogananda's like, you know perfectly well that I've spent every day for the last 4 years in your ashram, essentially like, how can I possibly be ready? And Sri Yukteswar says, you must appear. You must go to them. And Master, being a good disciple, says, I will, essentially, but kind of under his breath, he says, I will fill up the pages with your teachings. And it's interesting to me to observe, when we read, I don't know how your impression is, but reading Autobiography of a Yogi, I somehow came away with this impression that he just floated through life. Kind of his chariot wheels never touched the ground. He was just always up there because he had cosmic consciousness and he had these divine experiences, and it was all bliss. And a closer reading, Asiatic cholera twice in one lifetime, and he lived through both of them. I mean, chronic dyspepsia to the point that he despaired of his life. I mean, it just goes on and on. People betraying him. Sri Yukteswar just after him all the time about every little misstep in terms of his behavior. And then this university exam thing. So interestingly, the next day, Yogananda appears. This is the line I've often quoted this, where Yogananda is on his bicycle, flowers in one hand, hand on the handlebars with the other, comes to the ashram, except this time he's very serious, and he's got this really heavy look on his face. And Sri Yukteswar looks at him and he says, don't be so serious. Essentially, doesn't that fellow Ramesh Chandra Dutt still part of your boarding house? And Master says, yes. And Sri Yukteswar says, go ask him to help you. He'll help you. And Master says, but he's the honor man of our class. He carries a heavier class load than everybody else does. Sri Yukteswar says, he'll find time for you. And so it proves. And Ramesh helps Yogananda day by day by day, saying, I think the test is going to have this, and try that, and read this, and study that. And Yogananda navigates through all the different exams until one particular one where he fills out the exam, but he messes up. There were 4 parts, and you had to do in 2 sections. You had to do one of each section. Well, he did both of the first section and none of the second section, which meant that the top grade that he could possibly get was 33. I assume that means 33 out of 100, which doesn't sound very high. Well, the minimum passing mark was 36. And he comes to Sri Yukteswar and says, I blundered, I screwed up, I don't deserve all the help that Romesh gave me, all the divine blessings that have been coming away essentially are for naught because I screwed up. And Sri Yukteswar looks at him and smiles and he says, look, the chances of you not getting your university degree are approximately the chances that the sun and moon are going to change positions in the sky, and I don't think that's going to happen. So just be of good cheer. And sure enough, he goes to the school, goes back to his boarding house, finds that they've lowered the standard to 33 for that particular test. So he makes it. And, the legend grows that this mad monk, it's so cute to me that he uses all the terminology that everybody, his nickname is the Mad Monk. It's like they know that he's interested in spirituality. But see, Sri Yukteswar is trying to give him a bigger picture. He's trying to say a couple things at once. He's saying, look, your family has supported you. Your father arranged this, 4 years of education. You can't just throw it in their face and say, well, I'm sorry, I'm all spiritual. Thank you very much. I've spent the whole time in my guru's ashram and university. Forget it. Sri Yukteswar says you have to show them that this is practical. But the other part of it is he's saying, you're going to go to the West and they're going to be a lot more interested to hear what you have to say and a lot more receptive to it if you have a couple of letters after your name that says you got a college degree. That means we can sort of trust what you say. And so, sure enough, Yogananda does get the degree. And Sri Yukteswar sums it up by saying, it's just that the Lord found it more convenient to give you your degree than to change the positions of the sun and the moon. So it's not that big a deal, but it was for him at that time. If we think of all that's involved in tests, and this is a segue to what Nirmala was saying, we're being challenged not because we're bad or we're, stupid or whatever. It's that's just the process of life. I trundled out a cliche one time in front of Swamiji that had become popular in the 90s. No good deed ever goes unpunished. And we were in India at the time, and some circumstance had come up in which the best laid intentions and the best plans and all of it had just gone to smithereens. And so I trotted that out. And, it was cute and it was appropriate in the moment, in that setting. But he looked at me and he said, no, that's not quite right. No good deed ever goes unchallenged. And which is to say that the purpose of the challenge is to see how true is this? Is it real? Is it deep? Is it rooted? Because just like the Romesh Chandra Dutt in the story, when we're qualified, we carry a heavier load. When Swamiji's ability was such, he could take on karma. He would take on karma because at that point it didn't matter to him. To carry a greater load was part of his role to play, and so he did play that role. I was intrigued to read a story. This is a current day story. Every once in a while I just have to slip a little sports story in. Sorry guys, but some of you may have heard the name, those of you who follow basketball, Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg was the first draft pick in the recent NBA draft, so the college draft. He was the number 1 pick. Well, when he was 11 or 12 years old, and about my height, 6'1" or 6'2", in 7th grade, he was practicing with a trainer, and the trainer would bring in high school kids to challenge him. Well, he went through all the high school kids that this trainer could find, and just nobody could match up with him. So finally, this trainer thought, all right, I'm going to get somebody from college, and I'm going to bring him in to work with this 7th grader. So he did. He said, I want to make him uncomfortable. I want to push him. Well, so this fellow came in. Of course, this guy is probably 20, 21 years old. He's, 8 or 9 years old, or more physically mature, stronger, taller, etc. He did make Cooper Flagg uncomfortable. So after the practice was over, the coach said, do you want to do it again? Cooper said, yeah, I do. So some days, a week went by, they brought the fellow in again. This time, Cooper Flagg shows up, and his mom, who had sort of been organizing this, and herself was an athlete. And they both kind of had a little smirk on their faces because he had worked his tail off for that intervening days or a week or whatever. He came in and mopped the floor with this college kid, 7th grader to a starting college Division I player. I mean, that's at a pretty high level. And it just kind of went on from there. He was 17 years old and he was invited to work out with the U.S. Olympic team. This is, LeBron James and a whole series of big stars. He held his own. He did not back down. That willingness to say, I'm not being challenged, or in his case, it was others who were doing it on his behalf. We need to challenge this kid. Well, all of us are that person. In some way or another, life will say, that person doesn't look like they're getting challenged enough. Let's turn up the heat a little bit. Let's push a little harder in this way or the other way. And what will we discover? Oh, gee, as a 7th grader, my game didn't have this element or that or the other thing. I need to work on those things. And we're not to be disappointed by that. We're to be glad because, my meditation gets restless if I don't prepare properly. Or, in this situation, my buttons get pushed. I have buttons apparently, and they do sometimes get pushed. And, kids will do this magnificently. Kids are just like a gift. They have this radar, and they don't just use their thumb. They use their elbow or their heel or something to really stomp on that button, just get a hold of it. If it's there, it will be pushed. That's sort of the law. We have to learn to get where we can respond as opposed to react and live in the light of our divine potential. And that to me is what Yogananda exemplified in all aspects of his life. He came to this country and he started a campaign. It was like he was bringing an army. The army was his own person, but in a sense, he was bringing the army of Indian higher teachings into this country, and he had to work with the consciousness that was here, which was racist and bigoted in many ways. He had to deal with all that. Or if not those things overtly, then it was, who are you and what are you saying and why are you dressed in orange and why do you have long hair and why, it's sort of all the questions. And he had to overcome that so that people could learn a science and an art that would help them to find freedom and fulfillment and peace. And that path is for all of us. And just as Nirmala was saying, we can learn from the challenges that have come to us by sharing the blessings that have come afterwards with others who are facing similar circumstances. Every one of us is divinely trained to offer some kind of service, solace, some kind of blessing into the world according to the ways that we have been challenged. Let's share that blessing with everyone we meet.